Why is it that the majority of indie games out there make little to no money? And what can you do to ensure your game is actually profitable? I had the honor of chatting with Scott Miller, the mind behind what I would call the first independent games, Wolfenstein 3D and Duke Nukem. Stick around because Scott's going to tell us exactly what we can do to ensure our games are actually profitable. I think you're working with some very talented developers, and they're in, I guess, the minority of developers, meaning that thousands and thousands of games are released every year. Majority of them from indie developers aren't profitable, which is sad to say. And I think a lot of effort is put into making games that don't, well, back to what we were talking about earlier, which is it doesn't return their investment. I've been wanting to ask you, why do you feel like the majority of indie game developers out there fail to create a monetarily profitable indie game? How can they stand out?
Well, I mean, the cold truth is not every game can be profitable. The market has got a lot of games right now, so not everyone can make money. It's like in the movie industry, not every movie makes money. In the TV industry, not every TV show is making money. There's TV shows canceled all the time. So it's just a tough competitive business, and there's all sorts of factors that lead to success. There's luck is a huge factor. There's persistence. There's talent. There's networking. There's putting together the right team. There's all these different factors, and I think probably with most, and then also, you got to come up with a great idea. You got to be unique with that idea. So I don't know how to really guide people through this and tell them some sort of secret formula that will make their game be successful.
Yeah,
and marketing is another big factor. That's a big focus for us here at AppGeek because you have to really put in the money and effort and work with the right marketing team to make your game get noticed in this super competitive environment.
Yeah.
You have to, like on Steam, you have to build up your wish lists and get articles written about your game and get great trailers and demo, get a demo out there and stuff like that. So there's just so much to it. And sometimes you got to have some swings and misses before you make your hit also. So, in my case, I made a lot of games before I made anything that was successful. You got to be willing to go through that learning curve and growth curve and all that kind of stuff. And maybe find new partners if your current partners aren't working out.
Yeah,
it's just a lot of pieces to the puzzle. There's no magic answer to it, unfortunately. Otherwise, we'd all be swimming in money.
Well, I mean, I find it funny how you immediately brought up luck, because how can you juggle all of those things without being a talented person to begin with? Like, I feel like it sounds like you were just born with instincts. I mean, you just have an instinct for selling games.
One of the things I do really well, I think, is I sort of self-teach myself things. I read about 100 books a year. I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly trying to grow as a person. I never think I know it all. And I was this way back in the 90s. I was just constantly reading books. I was reading books on marketing, and it led me to create the 3D Realms label because I wanted to position that label just for 3D games because I saw 3D games as the emerging market within the game industry. So we created. Anyway, you just have to always be learning, willing to listen to other people who may have good advice for you, and just always be in a growth mindset, always improving your talents. You can never rest in this industry because other people will pass you by if you do.
Yeah, but that was fun for you, right? Like, it's a joy to do all that.
Yeah. I have, I guess, maybe a workaholic's personality.
Yeah.
I remember many nights working on my text adventure games, my very first big games, called Beyond the Titanic, another one called Supernova. Many nights on weekends working on these games while my friends are out, doing something fun. Hey, Scott, come join us. Well, I need to do this tonight. So I gave
You're too
up,
busy making $200,000.
But back then I wasn't making that kind of money. I was working at a local college in their computer department.
Oh, okay. So that was before you made the $100,000.
Yeah, while I was going to school. Yeah, I was working in the computer lab.
Yeah.
Probably making $15,000 a year or something. So,
I mean, dude, that was the same for me in college. I spent the majority of my time in the library I would go to the most antisocial spot of the library, all the way to the basement, and I would open up my laptop and work on games and build my studio there. And it comes down to, like, I from what I can sort of, the theme of what you've said here is like humility, but also it's not work, it's play, right? You just like reading books and learning how to make games and asking for advice. That's just fun for you, right?
I mean, I wish back then YouTube would have existed and I could have watched your videos, because, I probably would have learned a lot,
Yeah.
Back then that didn't exist. So I was just, reading my books and, everything I could, business books, marketing books, you name it. And also playing a lot of games, because you can learn a lot by playing other people's games too. You can learn what's working with these games, what's not working. As my two boys were growing up, and I was always thinking maybe they'll get into this, to my industry, at some point. When they were like, young teenagers, and they would play some game, I would say, now, tell me 3 things you liked about that game and 3 things you didn't like. And then they would come with some things. Then I would say, now tell me 3 things that you could improve with that game. Like, what would you do to make that game even better? And that really got them thinking. That's just a good exercise for everyone, I think, that wants to be in the game industry. Any game you play, think about, the 3 things that you didn't like, and come up with some things that you can think of that would make that game even better. Always be thinking like that. Make that your standard mindset.
Well, I find it interesting